everyone. My name is Daniel Su. I'm an advisor here for Foodland Ventures. My background is I've worked in upstream ag startups, downstream produce retailers, as well as at some VC funds. I've seen many vertical farm outfits come and go over the years. So I'm very excited to have this panel and moderate it on vertical farming. So first, let me welcome our two very distinguished speakers. First, John Purcell. Over there is the president and CEO of Unfold. He has over 30 years of experience in crop science innovation, including at Monsanto and Bayer. And John is joining us today from the East Coast of the US. So good evening, John.
Thanks, Daniel. Nice to be here.
Second, we have Mr. Yong Park. He is the CMO and EVP at Farm8, which is a vertical farm operator and marketer of produce. He has over 30 years of experience in brand strategy, global marketing, and product innovation, both in food as well as in the IT industries. Yong joins us today from South Korea. So good morning, Yong.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Excellent. So again, super excited to have this conversation. Vertical farming, I feel like gets a lot of hype, even though it's actually been around for decades. And you each bring, I think, perspectives that can help our audience get beyond that hype and closer to reality. So I'm going to just kind of start with some questions around that. First to John at Unfold. Unfold provides superior seeds tailored to vertical farming. How do you respond to the questions that some people have about, basically why control crop genetics when the vertical farms already control the whole environment? What don't they understand about vertical farming, and what's the additional upside that you guys are providing that people are missing?
Yeah, for me, it gets down to really one of the basic equations of plant breeding. It's an equation that's pretty simple. It's called G by E by M, which is basically genetics or genotype, by environment, by management. And so what it means is you think about those three elements and how do they factor into how the crop actually performs during the production cycle. In the case of vertical farming, what's really cool is you have such really sophisticated and exquisite management techniques to control the environment. But it doesn't mean the G part of the equation, the genotype or the genetics, aren't important. It means you actually have a better opportunity to really leverage those genetics. Which you think about when you're breeding for crops that go into open field or for farming outdoors. You can do all the breeding you can, but if the environmental conditions change, if you have dramatic shifts in water or in rain, or in temperatures, the genetics can only take you so far. What's great about vertical is you have these incredible management techniques to control the environment, which means that genetics that you hone for that production system will perform the same way 365 days a year. And that gives you the consistency in the produce that really will pay off at the consumer level. So for me, it gives a tremendous opportunity to use all the tools of modern biology to really drive the genetics honed specifically for vertical farming, because you got the E handled by the M, which means the G can really perform at its optimal performance. So.
Got it. So it's a gem, a nice mnemonic there.
Yeah.
So these pictures of these beautiful vertical farms and the different racks and lighting is really just the E part, and there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, it's E and the M. It's really how do you manage it to control that environment, and so that's it. But the G, I think, is getting a lot more attention now. Companies like Unfold, but other seed companies, et cetera, realizing that that's kind of the missing piece at this point. Is how do you now take full advantage of genetics specifically honed for vertical farming environments?
Got it. Okay. Thanks. Yong, so you guys are actually operating these racks and lights and essentially the vertical farms. I feel like, again, going to the hype, the mainstream popular imagination is farm to table. So people cite that vertical farming, the big benefit is that you can decentralize it, grow it by the consumers, and reduce the logistics costs as well as the environmental footprint. But I noticed that, Farm8, which is a pretty, I think you guys have been running this operation 15, 20 years. Your production is actually pretty centralized in a rural area outside of Pyeongtaek, not in downtown Seoul, for example. So can you share with our audience a more nuanced understanding of vertical farming as a business operation based on Farm8's experience?
I think, first of all, we are headquartered in Pyeongtaek, which is about, like hour from downtown Seoul. So we have a major indoor vertical farm in Pyeongtaek. We call PlanTFarm 1 and PlanTFarm 2 is located in Pyeongtaek. And then we also have another big farm in Cheonan, which is another. And then we have PlanTFarm 4 just completed in downtown Seoul. So it's one of the biggest indoor vertical farm located in the center of Seoul.
Okay.
Right. So I see the opportunity for smart farm in many aspects. One, we can build large scale indoor vertical farm outside of the city and then producing the larger amount of produces there. But we also do the urban farming. As I mentioned to you, we have farm in downtown Seoul, and then we also doing so-called metro farm, which is indoor vertical farm in 5 subway stations in Seoul, right? And then another opportunity we are actually seeing is actually building indoor vertical farms in retail outlets. So we have indoor vertical farms in the Megamart, which is one of the large hypermarket in Korea.
Okay.
And we have indoor vertical farm in IKEA in Seoul. And IKEA actually uses produces from indoor vertical farm to serve their the salad restaurants, salad cafe in Seoul. And then we also work with many food and beverage companies and restaurants in Seoul and outside of Seoul. And one of the interesting one is if you guys know the Korean barbecue, right? And
sure.
When people eat Korean barbecue, they actually eat with vegetables.
Yeah.
So we actually built small indoor vertical farms in several Korean barbecue restaurants, and that's receiving very well applause from our consumers. So if I recap, we try to utilize all different opportunities we can use for indoor vertical farms. Another example would be we are also producing produces in Antarctica. There is a Korean research center in Antarctica. We actually sent our container smart farms to Antarctica, and they are actually producing various vegetables and fruits there.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have Farm8 and your perspective, because I do feel like a lot of media focuses on these recent startups, often from Western markets, whereas you guys have been doing this for a while. But it strikes me that T1, your first farm, again, was centralized outside of Seoul, and so the impression I get is that the core business is built around a centralized system, and there are very exciting recent experiments in the subway, in Antarctica. But I'm curious why it didn't happen the other way around. Why was T1 not in Seoul if all these things we hear about vertical farming were true?
I think to me it's two different perspectives. If you are supplying raw vegetables to consumers or to restaurants and in the city, then that's one type of business. But another type of business Farm8 is doing is we actually has a processing factory sitting next to the big the PlanTFarm 1 and PlanTFarm 2 in Pyeongtaek. So it's not, we actually do cutting the vegetables and we create a salad mix. We actually create we call farm mix. It's like the meal kit type of product. So one of the business, the main business also is, supplying raw produces to our B2B consumers and, B2, the consumers, the users,
Right,
end users.
right. And you,
But we are also positioning as a food company and using produces from Smart Farm and create, various,
I see.
product, including.
I see. So you're describing, on one hand, the vertical farming for the production of the produce, but there's also a whole other value add kind of business, salads, finished products, mixes, and that perhaps that business is more easily centralized, which kind of explains how Farm8 evolved in this way.
Yeah, and then also, even though the largest farm is located outside of Seoul, from harvest to getting to the hands of consumers is within 2 days. So that's pretty quick. Yeah,
sure. I think South Korea is a relatively small market versus the United States. So, but in that relatively small, like I still notice that it's not in downtown, not in the beginning. But yeah, you were missing consumers as well as customers, and there's a good difference. Like B2B customers are hotels and retailers, whereas consumers, they actually want a finished salad and they'll buy that. So I'm kind of curious, over the years, what has been the Korean consumers' response to Farm8's products and indoor vertical farming in general? And follow-on question is, having been to all the markets that you've worked in, how unique are those reactions or behaviors versus universal to other markets outside Korea?
Korean customers are very difficult to satisfy, as you know. But we are actually quite surprised. We are getting good reaction from our consumers. One of the surprising thing, especially happened this year, is we are selling the raw produce even with the roots to one of the major supermarkets, and saying it's like freshly harvested, right? And we thought all Korean consumers actually prefer the vegetables which is already processed and cleaned and packaged, but this kind of raw vegetables with the roots are getting huge sales in those stores, and realizing the Korean consumers now really understand we call clean eating, healthy eating, and then they think the vegetable with the roots, freshly harvested close to the stores, they think it's healthier and fresher and tasty.
Fascinating. So just don't clean the things, and actually consumers, the response is pretty positive.
Yeah, and then as you know, the produces from indoor vertical farm, they don't have to actually clean. It's already clean. You can just it is right. And another big thing is the Korea has problem with the air pollution, right? The microdust issue.
Okay.
But the produces from indoor vertical farm is basically pollution free. That's another big benefit for consumers.
I mean, on Farm8, on these consumer products, on the packaging, are you communicating these things? No air pollution, fresh, vertical farm. Is that part of the marketing? What's in, what's out?
Yeah, we cannot say pollution free if we want to, because that message can actually create negative image for the traditional farming. Right? Because we say we are pollution free. We are not affected by the microdust.
Okay.
We want to say that, but we don't also want to hurt our traditional farming and give the vegetables from traditional farming is polluted by microdust.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
But more and more people visit our metro farm, which is in the subway station. People actually looking at those farm, indoor vertical farm, in the building. They actually realize, those vegetables are clean.
And And again, though, on your packaging, then, do you say this is from a vertical farm?
The packaging, we used to say it's from a vertical farm, but now I am actually changing that to branding our vegetables. So instead of saying, these are the vegetables from Smart Farm or the indoor vertical farm, I basically named our vegetables as farm veggie.
Farm veggie. Okay.
In Korean, it's farm 채소.
Okay.
Which basically represent. My goal is this farm veggie will represent, all the vegetables from Smart Farm. So we don't have to say, it's from, the Smart Farm. Farm veggie means clean vegetables, which provide best taste and also freshness.
And then is that brand also used like in the subway?
Yeah.
Smart Farm. Okay, so they can associate. So you're creating a brand that people associate, not explicitly with vertical farming, but they've seen the subway station, they tasted it, and they like it. Okay.
And the farm veggie stands for, my brand positioning is, always in season, meaning farm veggie is the vegetable, like probably same in Taiwan and also, right? In Korea, we have concept called certain food is, best to eat in certain season, right? Like certain kind of fish is best in spring, certain type of fruits is best in summer.
Right.
So I'm basically using that concept, saying the vegetables from our Smart Farm is always in season, year round.
Right.
And which implies it's best quality, best nutrient, best taste, and the best freshness.
And when the consumers are on their subway trip and see the brand and they can also make that connection. This is why it's always available. And again, you've worked in lots of different markets, not just Korea.
Mm-hmm.
What parts of these things do you think the audience could take into their markets, and which are maybe just really a Korean sort of thing?
I think in Asia, I can see it's the same kind of attitude from consumers toward the indoor vertical farm product, and we are currently looking into opportunities in Middle East. Middle East is actually different because they don't grow vegetables locally, right? But having this indoor vertical farm within the country, and producing vegetables and then positioning as a locally produced vegetable, I think that will have a good potential to the consumers in the country. Also talking about the vegetable with roots, the most of vegetables in Middle East countries are imported, and then people are not used to seeing vegetable with roots.
Right.
And having the vegetables produced from Smart Farm with roots, I think that has a very strong potential for those countries.
Okay. John, I think Yong made a great point, which is like Korean, consumers are hard to please. I actually find consumers all over the world pretty hard to please. I'm curious, sitting in the US, what resonates or what doesn't connect for you and your experience with consumers?
Yeah, and I think for me, I've been very fortunate. I've been on farms in over 40 countries. I've worked with farmers around the world, but I do think there are always some specific attributes that may be country specific, but I think some of the mega trends, Daniel, pretty much hold. I mean, the trend toward hyper local, the trend toward reducing inputs, the trend toward people trying to make a connection with where their food comes from. And I lived in Europe, I've lived in the US, I've spent a lot of time across the globe. And I think that connectivity with what we're eating is true in many parts of the world. And I think I love some of the things Yong was talking about, because the more we can do to connect consumers with how that food is produced, because we got a huge gap right now. In the US, about 1% of the population is producing food. and the other 99% is putting pictures of food on Instagram, right? I mean, everybody's talking about food, everybody's working with food, but there's just many cases, very little exposure to where that food comes from. But people are asking, we used to be, they asked, how does it taste? How does it look? But now they're asking, tell me that story. Where did it come from? Who grew it? How did they grow it? But that's cool. And I think that's a trend that's out there globally. You know, that, as I say, the move toward hyper local production, the move toward understanding the food story, where it came from, the move toward tell me more about how this is produced. What impact did that have on the earth, and what impact does that have on, you know, people are making choices based on that food, on the food production system. But we got a long ways to go. And I love some of the things Yong was talking about, because, you know, the more we can get in front of people how food is produced and start bridging that divide, the better off we're going to be. I think all of us in food and ag have that responsibility to get out beyond just our own circles, our own chain, our own, you know, scientific circles, and really engage with the public, or engage with those who are engaging with the public. I know for me, I do a lot of chef conferences. One advantage, you get great food at those conferences, but the other advantage is you're talking with individuals who have massive audiences. You know, and if we can get them talking about how technology and innovation can play a role to give the consumers the experience they're looking for, that's good. Because, you know, I think in many places in the world, there's this romantic notion we got to go backwards to have the food we want, versus I'm a big believer that technology innovation doesn't matter whether you're looking for organic or local or sustainable. It's innovation and technology that can provide that consumer experience. But for many people, that's not the way they think. But I think some of the examples Yong gave is great, because people are actually seeing, oh, this is really cool high-tech production, yet the food tastes great. It's obviously fresh.
Right.
It's connecting with them, you know, on side of a core value piece. And then they're seeing, oh, technology and innovation is giving me the kind of experience I want when I think about my fresh produce.
Yeah. In the Metro Farm we operate, we actually do, we have a Kids Academy. And this is we actually run an educational program for kids so that they can experience, you know, the indoor vertical farm, and they can also do, you know, their own harvesting in the indoor vertical farm, and they create their own salad. And surprisingly, you know, those kids who harvested vegetables in our indoor vertical farm, they actually like eating those vegetables. And we can actually see a smile from their parents when they actually eat, you know, the vegetables from Smart.
They produce, very cool.
Very cool. John, I must ask on consumer education, which is kind of this topic we're on. How is Unfold educating consumers, telling the story of what you guys are doing, which is actually very high tech? I know you guys aren't doing GMO, but plant genetics, like how are you getting that narrative out in a way that's accurate? Because I feel like whether you like it or not, consumer attitude is not necessarily always rational or based on, you know, objective stuff.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, as I say, for us, it's actually getting in the community. We all go to big conferences. We all, you know, talk to, you know, other folks that are within the chain, within produce, et cetera. But for us, it's actually getting out and doing other things, going to garden clubs, going to women's clubs, going to community events, and just sharing, here's what it's like. And the other cool thing we try to do is have every employee tell their own story. Talk about what vertical farming is, but why are you interested in it? Why are you, as a, you know, as an employee, excited about what vertical farming can do? We actually have in a program where all employees write a blog and post that, you know, LinkedIn and other places. Because I think the more we can personalize this, the more we can talk about what drives us and kind of our core values. And which people realize is, for a lot of us in science, what drives us is the same thing that's driving it. So we do want to have a more sustainable food supply. We do want to find out ways to produce food the way that consumers would say they like it produced. So what we try to do is just connect on a you know, on a real human level. And then, like I said earlier, the other thing we try to do is, as often as we can, let's talk to those influencers, because, you know, we're a small company, and even a science and tech company. When you think about chefs and food bloggers and food writers, they have a tremendous influence. But if we can get them to our events, if we can talk to them about how our technology innovation is leading to better, fresher produce that tastes great, they are incredible spokespersons for what the technology is about, what innovation can do. And so I do think part of it is doing our own part, but also part of it is understanding who are the influencers in this field? Who are the people that really can connect with massive audiences and start to tell the story of where this food comes from and how these new technologies, these new innovations can really provide the consumers with the experience they're looking for. And that's the chefs, the bloggers, the writers. They have audiences well beyond, you know, what I have on LinkedIn or other things. We try to do what we can. But fact is, if we're talking to the right folks and they understand and they get it, man, they can be incredible advocates for technology innovation in the food sector.
Okay. Yeah. We call them KOLs over here, key opinion leaders. And for sure, it's kind of like the new way of marketing. I want to turn to your customers. So not necessarily the end users, but the businesses you're selling to. And Unfold, you guys are selling to vertical farm operators. And my question would be, you know, what's the premium that you anticipate growers willing to pay? Another way of asking that is like, what's the benefits? Well, what are the yield increases that Unfold is offering?
Well, no, I think you framed it the right way. And the way I always think about any kind of premium or any kind of pricing strategy, it's always got to be value based and value sharing. You know, the way I've always, my career, I've always tried to say, if we create value for our customers, usually can figure out a way to share that value. So for us, I think what we're really trying to do the way we try to appeal to our customers is being 100% focused on vertical farming, really understanding what the challenges they're facing. And so we can go at this two ways. And in the end, it turns out, it turns into profitability in their net, right? But you can do that by either providing products that have, you know, better sensory traits, better consumer appeal, really growing that top line revenue by having products that are really exciting for their customers, which is the grocery stores or the consumers. But the other way is, what can we do to improve your COG situation, your cost of goods? Because frankly, one of the challenges of vertical, it's a capital intensive. You know, there's cost associated with that. It's amazing technology on the production side, but let's face it, it's not a cheap technology, right? And so if we can have higher yields, so you're getting more per square foot, if we can reduce their input costs, or if we can reduce the amount of energy that's used to produce the same amount of crop, or if we can shave time off this crop cycle, you know, instead of a 28-day, maybe you harvest in 26 days. These are all the things we're trying to do with our genetics, because that turns into a cost of goods advantage, which is where they have to compete in many cases. So we try to do it both ways. Let's provide differentiatable product that'll appeal to their customers and the consumers, but then let's also look at where do their costs come in. A lot of it's around energy and around, you know, just the cost of running a pretty sophisticated operation. Anything we can do to reduce input, reduce energy, accelerate crop cycle time, then that's going to reduce COGS and help them on the bottom line. And then once you are able to demonstrate through trialing and testing and them using your product that they are getting benefits from that, then you figure out the value sharing, and that's where the premium comes in.
That makes sense. The top line and the bottom, well, the top and the costs.
Right.
I'm curious, just to get concrete. I know it's only been a year, but I know you have like your first sales. I'm curious, just like that first product, what's the crop, and is it a top line kind of value, or is it more of the COGS value?
It's kind of both, but so we are selling lettuce now, which is cool.
Okay.
We're just a year into this thing, so the revenue line is small, but it's we have revenue, which is cool. But we're just at the beginning of this. To be honest with you, we are doing a lot of testing and trialing. Part of the way our deal is structured, we have access to the Bayer germplasm, which is a global germplasm resource. Bayer has a huge vegetable seed business. We have the ability to commercialize that for vertical farms. So we're doing a lot of testing and trialing with customers to see which of those products will work. And then we're also beginning our breeding programs to really develop the second generation of products. But it's almost a biphasic approach, which is, let's look at all this great germplasm, test it in the farm, see how it performs in our customers' operations. But then that educates us with, then what are the genetics we want to use to really drive our breeding programs, which will be the second and third generation products. So, but I think, I think for, one of the things about vertical farms is their cost structure is different than open field for sure. If you can demonstrate, what we're finding is if you could demonstrate value, that is, it's a product they can produce, a product that they can sell, then you can, I think, create an attractive opportunity for them and for us, and that's refining. But it's early days. I'll be honest with you. We're a year into this. We're just seeing our first revenue, but we're pretty excited about what we can do as we, especially as we get more relationships with vertical farms around the world to really demonstrate the value of the products that we're trying to commercialize.
Makes sense. I mean, we are here with a vertical farm operator, so I cannot help but to ask, Yong, what are your thoughts? What's your reaction or feedback for an offering like what John has just described as a vertical farm operator yourself?
Yeah, I think, our major challenge is actually, as John says, is the reducing the cost, right? And then also finding, right energy source, which is more sustainable. So those are the key component of operating smart farm in Korea. The vegetable price fluctuates a lot in Korea. So like, for example, like basil, it can go from 10,000 won to 100,000 won, depending on the season, right? And with our current cost structure, our smart farm vegetables are priced at as a premium, which is when we average the vegetables from traditional farming, and we average those fluctuations, and we are probably like 10% above the average, right? But if we can reduce that cost even by another 10%, that would be big growth in smart farm.
Wow. So let me get this right. Farm8 products are currently actually a premium product because that's a significant 10% premium to the consumers. But if you can eliminate that, then you're actually going to go mainstream.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
See, but we can do it either way, right? It's premium, but we are getting, one of the excitement happened this year is our B2B customers, like the big food processing companies, they are actually asking, the yearly supply of smart farm vegetables at higher price, than the vegetables they buy from traditional farming. That's because they started realizing, getting same quality of vegetables in same size at the same price throughout the year, they can actually save lots of efficiency in the production.
Right.
And then, also the vegetable from traditional farming, they tend to have we call the loss rate, because those, when they process vegetables, there are some portion they cannot use. But with smart farm vegetables, the usage rate is very high.
Right.
So all in all, even if they pay higher price, but they can actually save money at the end. So we are getting, those kinds of demands from our food customers. That's actually a big opportunity for us.
If I may ask, your B2B versus your B2C segments, what's the relative sizing? Is it half or 80-20?
I say maybe 60-40.
64, okay. 60-40 to 60 is
and B2C.
B2B. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So a good 60% of the business is actually to customers who really value the reliability, the consistency, and they'll pay the premium willingly. And then if someone like an Unfold could come in and help you with the COGS part, the cost side, then that's just extra margin for the business.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. That is very cool. I want to switch gears here and just look forward a bit, because I think both of you guys have good perspectives on where the field is going. And so maybe a question to both of you, and we can start with John. What's one positive trend you see in vertical farming? And then on the flip side, what's one obstacle that you're also like keeping an eye out for in this sector?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things that's happening, and this is actually it's been happening within the broader ag industry as well. But I think in vertical, it's really been on hyperdrive, if you will, and that is the confluence of technologies that are coming together. And what I mean by that is, we've never had in the last 5-10 years now, just the amount of collaborations that are happening between companies like us who are focusing on the biology end of things, with the engineering people who are really putting together these farms, with the data, all the incredible data and digital crop management that's happening now. I think for vertical, because of what I talked about earlier, talk about this, how we're controlling this environment through all these incredible engineering. It's an amazing time to be collaborating across what used to be pretty disparate industries, and then bringing it all together. And then, as Yong's example gives you, it's all got to work on the farm. And then, so the ability for really some cool collaborative efforts happening from biology to engineering to data, and then the real life example of how does that work in a vertical farm. There's just a lot of great collaborations happening. And to me, that's where you make advances. When you bring really smart people from diverse disciplines, you get them to attack a problem, and you come up with some really incredible solutions. And to me, that's one of the most exciting parts that's happening in vertical. And it's happening in ag more broadly, but I think in vertical, because the way the pieces are coming together, it's really going in an incredible rate.
Yeah.
The second half of your question around the what obstacles or headwinds. I'm a big believer that in order for vertical to really capitalize on the incredible amount of capital that's generated, a couple $1 billion plus has been invested in vertical farms, right?
Yeah.
I think we've got to, as an industry, expand the crop portfolio. I mean, I just think, right now it's a lot of leafy greens, a lot of microgreens, herbs and all that. And it's a great place to start. If there's a place to start, absolutely. But I do think what some farms are starting to do, and we're going to try to do at Unfold, making that leap toward fruiting crops. And for us, that's tomato, pepper, cucumber. Other people are working on berries, et cetera. But when you get into those crops, we've all had these experiences where, and Yong touched on earlier, certain times of year, things tasted great. And then other times, not so great. And I think especially when you think about berries and tomatoes and other things, we've all had that, oh man, that didn't taste like that 3 weeks. Right. And it's just because something happened in the environment. But because we're controlling that environment, boy, to give a consumer that experience and that sensory and flavor profile they're looking for every day of the year, that's a huge upside. Now, there's some real R&D that has to happen to get those kinds of crops amenable to a vertical farming situation. It's easier with the leafies just because of the plant architecture, et cetera. But I'm a big believer that when we make the leap to fruiting crops, that's going to open the door to a huge expansion of vertical farms, just because your crop portfolio is so much broader. And there's a reason why, you think about all the big high-tech glass houses, they're growing peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, because there's a lot of value in that. And it's also differentiatable at the consumer level because the sensory profiles are so important in those crops. So I do think that leap in berries is in the same position. That leap toward fruiting crops and broadening the crop portfolio that are grown indoors will really see the industry flourish.
Cool. So I'm hearing big exciting thing is just the cross-sector collaboration. People who don't usually get together are now getting together in vertical farming. And then kind of the headwind is like making sure we don't just do the leafy greens, but it really expands to all the other opportunities. Yong, what do you think? What's most exciting and what is most concerning?
100%. Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, the technology advancement is one of the key things, right? The advancement in ICT technology, and then, advancement in LEDs, and, the equipment for the environment controls. All those technology innovation advance is actually helping us to, create and operate indoor vertical farms at lower cost, and then also operate at the low expenses. So that's one big thing. And then I also agree with John in terms of expanding our portfolio into fruits type of vegetables, right? Fruits kind of product. And another thing is, like, for example, if you buy salad product, salad in retailers in Korea, the vegetables in the salad product changes throughout the season, because they are basically producing salad based on the whatever the vegetable available at the time of the season.
Right, the season.
Having this indoor vertical farm, I can create the same salad vegetable mix throughout the year, so consumers can taste same salad throughout the year. It would be small change, you may think, but if you really look at vegetable salad product across all the countries, there are no branded salad product. The real reason is, if you want a brand product with one brand, then you want to provide consistent quality and taste.
Right.
But currently, with the traditional farming, it's almost impossible to do, unless you buy expensive vegetables in different season. But with this vertical farm, as I mentioned to you, always in season, always in season, we can actually create more standardized product for consumers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I tell you, Dina, one thing that it struck me as Yong was talking, and then if you fast forward, you think about the impact that e-retail is having and potential impact it has on how consumers buy their produce. You can imagine a day where it's not just Yong being able to put together these great combinations, but the consumer then deciding, I want this combination, and then that bag shows up at your door, rather than going to the grocery store and seeing what's out there. No, I want to tell you what I want, and you can see that, and then you start building in nutritional composition, food sensitivity, all these kinds of things. That's the world that we're building toward, and I think retail will be a huge enabler of that, because it's going to allow the consumer to say, "Here's what I want," and then because of great producers like Yong, they actually put together, "This is what that consumer wants. Let's get it to them." Right, and so this is a pretty exciting world ahead as all this stuff comes together.
Very exciting, really.
Yeah. Yong, I just before I want to move to actually what John was mentioning, but I do want to kind of push you on this. Like, what are you worried about? What is on the horizon that is concerning to you?
Ooh. The pressure would be the energy side, right? The people may challenge, if we are one of the big expense in the vertical farm is the energy cost, because we use LED, and then people may challenge, the LED lighting versus the sunlight. Sunlight, is sustainable, but LED lighting, we are using, maybe the electricity produced from, using fuel or some, traditional kind of production. So one of the key is finding sustainable energy source for the indoor vertical farm is one of the challenges.
That's very timely, given that COP26 is going on, and this is very much a concern across the board. Okay, so energy sources and maintaining sustainability going forward. Okay.
I totally agree. Because you think, there's a great benefits to vertical, but you got to remember, open field farmers are using the greatest energy source in our solar system, right? And they're using the sun. And so there's totally real challenges around energy. Yeah.
Okay. John, what you were talking about reminds me of, especially in China, there are these, like they call them D2C, but now they're almost calling them factory to consumer, where platforms are aggregating consumer demand and then rapidly designing and then producing en masse that product. You're seeing it in it's not even called fast fashion now, it's called ultra fast fashion. You're seeing it in other kinds of manufactured products. So I'm very curious, if you want to really get out there with the technology and the future forecasting, predictive analytics in agriculture, could we one day have crowdsourced, salads of different colors for our Insta feed? What are some wild ideas that you see on the horizon?
I think it's great. And it's so rare that anybody asks me any questions ever related to fashion. So I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful to that. But I think it is, and I think that this whole predictive nature, because it's driving everything. I think about breeding where we used to, date myself, but 20 years ago, you took pretty much everything into production to figure out, did it, into a field or into some cycle to actually figure it. Whereas now we could do so much in silica to say, here are probably the crosses we're going to make. Here is here are the 10 that had the best chances. So it's very rapidly accelerating our ability to bring innovation to the marketplace, all the predictive approaches we're doing. But I do think it also, as you pointed out, on the marketing side and on how to respond to consumer trends. Now, the disadvantage we have from fashion is you still have the constraints of a biological system. I mean, it still takes X amount of time to get from seed to seed as you produce new varieties, et cetera. But I do think what we're doing as far as using predictive analytics to drive advances in breeding, to drive new varieties being introduced, it's, we're shaving years off the normal development cycle for new varieties. But I do love, as I talked about earlier, I love this concept though of the more we can get to understanding exactly what the consumers are looking for, and then driving our R&D pipeline so that we're meeting that need as quickly as we can to when it actually appears in the marketplace. And I do think the good news is there's enough kind of commonalities in what we're seeing globally. Back to some of the trends we talked about earlier, the hyper-local, reduced inputs, fresh, all those kinds of things that we know what some of those things are. But I think we're just going to have to stay on the pulse and understand where this is going. But then I think the biology is getting at a pace that's much, much faster than we were ever to do before. But as I say, it's hard because you still have the constraints of biological system. But I do think we have a great opportunity to fulfill what consumers are looking for, and doing it in a time that's meaningful for them, because they don't want to wait 10 years to figure out, they finally give me what I wanted. So.
Well, I can, in terms of predictive analytics, I don't really need analytics. I kind of have a question, the final one here for Yong, which is, we talked about lettuce, we talked about basil, but during pandemic, I heard about a lot of vertical farms sort of switching to making things for pharmaceuticals, for cosmetics. Question, Farm8, why make lettuce when you can make, I don't know, something much higher value that's not even eaten anymore?
So during this pandemic, we actually benefited a lot because the vegetable consumption and salad consumption in Korea significantly increased, right? Okay. So I'm not answering to your question, but we have great sales in terms of the traditional leafy product.
Okay.
Right. So, but on the other hand, we are currently working on pharmaceutical type of product. Okay. We are partnering with the Korean cosmetic companies and then functional food companies. Yeah. And then we are working on growing more high value added produces. So we are working on it.
If you fast forward 10 years, could it be that all vertical farms are doing pharma precursors and cosmetics?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And then probably John doesn't think so.
I hope not. People still got to eat, right?
Yeah. So there are the demand for the traditional vegetables for food, and then we can also have indoor vertical farms specialized for more functional vegetables for pharmaceutical and functional products.
Got it. So it's not either or, you can do both.
Yeah, we can do both. So
maybe John, next time we talk, you'll be making seeds for some pharma or cosmetic product.
Who knows?
We'll see. Okay, I'm getting the time warning over here. Before we wrap up, I just want to give same question to both of you. The audience here has a lot of folks who might potentially want to reach out and connect to collaborate. So I guess basically just how can people get in touch with you? Yong?
Yeah, I think basically I can share my email address and even my phone number with you. So, if somebody wants to contact me, then, they can do it by email or, phone. And I am actually looking for the partners in overseas because our Farm8's plan is really moving into, the overseas market. Mm-hmm. So we are actively looking for potential partners who can actually build a smart farm together and then produce vegetables and then, distribute to consumers.
Okay, excellent. So you're not stopping at Antarctica, you're looking at other markets as well.
We are actively looking in Middle East, Asia, all those markets.
Excellent.
Different
Okay,
markets, different needs for indoor vertical farm. Yeah.
got it. John, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm impressed. The only continent I haven't been on a farm in is Antarctica, so in Yong, so that's good. Yeah. So for us, we always hit our website, unfold.ag. For me, I'm a big LinkedIn person, so John Purcell. Just look up John Purcell Unfold. Love to talk with folks, and Yong, we should talk too. We definitely have some interest, levels of interest.
Yes.
So it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed being on the panel with you. And Daniel, thanks so much for moderating this so well.
Excellent. That's all we have time for today. So a big thank you to both John and Yong for joining, as well as Foodland Ventures for making this possible. And with that, I will hand it back to the larger conference.